guys? It's your boy 3 Stacks in this thing, baby, representing Team Kings of Games. Today I'm going to be talking about sleeper decks that have potential that has either been tapped into but not fully or untapped. And these decks all have potential to be incredibly powerful decks. Could even be meta one day if they got one thing: representation. Representation. All it would take for people to consider how powerful these decks is just for them to see it being piloted multiple times online. Some of these decks are even stronger in the right hands of a good pilot, of course. Some of these decks are just going to have inherent weaknesses that some of them can be generic and splashable in every deck. So that's when a deck can lose its favor and lose its, I guess you could say, appealing viability, because a deck's not going to be that appealing to you if it's like, this deck loses to one Imperm, everybody plays Imperm. Prime example, right? And some of these strategies are so powerful that with just the archetype alone, they can absolutely destroy boards of 4, 5, 6 interruptions. I'm talking about no hand traps, no dark roller, no super poly, no kaijus, no lava golems, no spear modes, no evenlies, no nothing. Just good cardboard. Like, for example, have you ever been smacked by dinos and they didn't even hand trap you? Yeah, stuff like that happens. Have you ever played against pendulums and it's like, how did he just break my board? He didn't even play hand traps. Have you ever ran into a hero player where heroes just destroyed your board and they didn't even have a hand trap? I can go on. So some of these decks are so inherently powerful that just through the playstyle of critical mass, whether it's chain blocking, effectiveness, the pilot, and also the archetype just being so powerful and explosive, the sheer ferocity of high attack statistic monsters just being able to attack over Arclights, Opelousas, Defense Savages, things of that nature, no matter how it's done, some of these decks just have that playstyle where they don't even need hand traps, and yet they're still sleeper status. And I feel like one of the major things, the influential element, is it doesn't have high enough representation. So I've broken down in categories. These sleeper decks are going to be in that category of either control, mid-range, combo, or aggressive OTK. Aggressive OTK has the similar playstyle of a critical mass assembling boards of multiple gigantic monsters, probably boss monsters at that, so you could put them in the same category as combo. I'm going to try to be brief so that this video isn't super long. The strategies that I talk about, you could look into them more and research on your own if you just want to learn like a whole, like if you want more theology on it or if you just want a whole story on it, you can look into that on your own time. But starting with combo decks, the weakest combo decks on this list are going to be Black Wings, Warriors, Fire Fist, and Gladiator Beast. All of these decks do not have a consistent way to counter Nibiru, and all of them have the similar choke point where they utilize a link monster. Dark Warriors, for example, their link monster of choice is Isolde. For Fire Fist, it's debatable, but at the same time, if you hit the link too, it can be really, really rough because now they're paying full cost for resources that they don't always have, so it can just be like they can't even play. For Black Wings, it could be 4 Strix a lot of the times. For Gladiator Beast, hitting Test Panther is very crucial. So these are very, very powerful combo decks, but they lose to Nibiru, they don't have a way to play around it, and all of them utilize a link monster that normally facilitates a vast majority of the critical mass they generate, the powerful playstyle that they have. Even all these every combo deck is going to do the same thing. Going first, assemble a crazy board of multiple interruptions. I don't have to name all the boss monsters they can make because some of them have synchro, some of them have links, some of them have XOZs, some of them can make all of them, some of them even fusion spam. But they all assemble boards of multiple interruptions. Warriors, of all the weakest, the 4 weakest, Warriors I feel is the strongest and also the most degenerate. It has access to the Orcus engine. It could get even stronger and stronger, but it has a huge choke point. Sometimes Isolde not being able to resolve can just not, your turn's done. Like, you just can't do anything. So a smart player might just save their one hand trap for Isolde, and if it's an Imperm, it's like, dang, it can be really tough. The same thing with Glad Beast, Test Panther. So those are the weaknesses, honestly. That's why they're the weakest combo decks, but goodness gracious, these decks are also capable of going second. Fire Fists have a very kind of unique playstyle in their own. They could set up a wall like Madolche's, but with actual multi-negates, which is crazy. Very hard to OTK through that board. They can OTK on the follow-up. They plus so heavy out of all the combo decks in this list of the weaker ones. I feel like Fire Fist, even though they have the least forms of interactions in their ending boards, they plus the most. They get the most advantage. And it's not empty cardboard, just, oh, I have more cards than you. It's like, I have more cards than you and my cards actually do stuff. With Black Wings, they really require a lot of resources from hand, but the boards are crazy. Infinite negates are crazy. Multi-negates is crazy. Virus cards that you can play. Virus cards in this deck like Eradicator, Epidemic, things of that nature. Valkyrie for going second. Blackwing Armor Master, Full Armor Master being your own archetype-specific towers-like monster. Fire Fist being able to summon Heraclinos. Each one of these strategies has an ace up their sleeve that's like an auto win against certain matchups. Some decks can't out Heraclinos. Like Altergeist and Strikers, they might not be able to out Heraclinos. They just might not be able to out it. If you summon it correctly, it can be targeted. Okay, you know. The same thing with Dark Warrior and Blackwings. Dark Warriors have access to a lot more boss monsters than I think any of these other ones. They just start with Warriors, and then all of a sudden it's like, you're playing like 3 different archetypes. How did this happen? Like, I sold Resolves, Armageddonite. It's like, GG. With Gladiator Beast, it's going to be more like Dominatrix, Dominatus, Appaloosa, thank you, Jesus, Dragluvion, Titanic Galaxy, sometimes Infinite Negates with the Mist Valley cards. They can do that too. Extra deck locks. Every deck except for Fire Fist can do, I feel like, either the Infinite Negates or the Extra Deck Lock, which that in itself is an auto win against almost every strategy these days. And yeah, it's a sleeper deck, but it's locking you out of Yu-Gi-Oh! Even with the Dark Ruler no more, you still can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Multi-Negates and an Extra Deck Lock. The same thing that Emancipators can do. And some of these decks like Warriors are super duper consistent, but they're not in that tier caliber of some of these other decks because they can't play through multiple interruptions like that. But at the same time, all of these decks are able to go second. And one strength that Warriors have that all these other combo decks have of the 4 is they can play more hand traps than any because their combo requires just 2 cards, sometimes 1 card. With Fire Fist, they can play a lot of hand traps too, but it's because there's so many of their spells and traps have to be played at multiple ratios. You have very small space. It's not like compact. With Warriors, you can play like 15 to 20 starters, half your deck's gas, half of it's just cards to stop your opponent. Sometimes you only need 1 Neo Space connector to go off. With Gladiator Beast, their engine is not compact at all. In fact, to play this deck effectively and make sure it's not losing to its weaknesses, you have to commit almost your entire deck to your combo, which is a weakness that the deck has, but also the strengths lie in that this deck can also go second effectively. It can OTK, break through boards, shatter negates, which is very impressive, critical mass, non-once per turn cards, very powerful boss monsters that are soft once per turn. Heraclinos is insane. Dominatus is insane. Geyserus is crazy. Appaloosa is good. Infinite Negates are good. Bearer Statue Lock's crazy. The deck can do that. Dark Warrior can get into Orcus cards. Black Wings, Infinite Negates, Synchro Spams. You know what I'm saying? These decks are super duper strong. So we touched. And Fire Fist just kind of do their own unique thing. They don't have access to all the generic cards like everybody else, but their own archetype is so good by itself that they don't need the generic cards. But those are the 4 weakest. Now going into the stronger combo decks, we have Heroes. Heroes are cut from a different fabric. Heroes are like Dinos, like one of those decks that I talked about, where they could just really, without hand traps, just, oh, how did you get waxed, my dude? Look at your board. It was so nice. Oh, man, you got negate here, negate there. How did he just spank you? Where'd that Dark Law come from? Where'd that Sunrise come from? How did he get absolute? How did he even make absolute 0? I thought you had 4 negates. Yeah, Heroes is like that deck, dude. Like, it's like, dude, this deck can just keep going sometimes. That's why people play it as a going second strategy, because it's stronger going second than going first, because it has so much critical mass, and it's just so powerful, and its combos come from 1 to 2 cards. Going first, it has its own win condition. Not every deck's going to have a win condition. Multiple negates is good, but it's the what kind of negates that matter. But with this deck, that's a win condition. A one-sided Macrocosmos protected by Skill Drain is a win condition. With Gladiator Beasts and Dark Warriors have a win condition too, I ain't gonna lie, they do. But with Gladiator Beasts and Fire Fist and other decks like that, their win condition is hoping that their negates are the right negates, because they can't put, like, well, I will say actually Gladiator Beasts do have Heraclinos, that's a win condition in itself. Appaloosa and Dominatus, if it's a combo heavy deck, might get you. But I say win condition, I mean, like, it's so one-sided that certain strategies just can't out it without Dark Ruler. Like for Dark Law, a deck that needs its graveyard just can't play. Even Pendulums won't go to the extra deck, they'll be banished. So Heroes is just, like I said, cut from a different fabric, very iconic, very powerful strategy, cut from a different fabric, absolutely capable, able. It's surprising that the deck is a sleeper deck, put it that way. Then I'm going to talk about Mermels briefly. Mermels is a bit more popular than other decks on this list, but at the same time, they're not getting that representation. Remember how I said a lot of these decks, all they're missing is representation. They're not missing cards. They don't need new support. These strategies are already good. Dark Magicians is even on this list, and people are going to say they need more support. What? They got so much support, it's crazy. And we're about to get Dragoon of the Red Eyes. This deck's about to be like, you better watch out. I'm telling you, because people will think like a rogue or a casual player sucks, and they won't take them serious because they're not playing a meta deck until you get waxed by that sleeper meta deck, and you're like, sometimes you end up being like, I'm gonna build this deck, and then you end up looking like a hypocrite, you know? So it's funny how that happens. But Mermelds, briefly, they can rip almost your entire hand. They can summon cards like True Kings of All Calamity. They actually have builds where you can summon Bahamut Shark, Totally Awesome, Abyss Gaios, rank 7s, rank 8s. You have Mander to manipulate levels. The deck plays from the grave, so to an extent, it has a very unique playstyle in its own self because you can pitch cards for cost and actually capitalize off of them. Neptibus is a really strong card going second. The deck actually, if you play at least one Megalo, can actually OTK going second, which is really, really strong. Mermelds are definitely like a top tier deck, but they are not as powerful as other combo decks because they can lose to certain one-sided floodgates and in multiple interruptions. But the reason why they're one of the stronger combo decks is because they can play around Nibiru and they can play through new hand traps, even old hand traps, because of the basically the deep sea minstrel cards, and also being able to main deck called by, and cards like Neptibus being able to pay costs and sometimes being able to chain block, and sometimes you might not have the right hand trap. Some of the plays that Mermelds make, you have to have a very specific hand trap to stop them. But Mermelds just have an auto win in itself. Taking your hand away, putting calamities on the board, it's like, what are you going to do? You know, even if you top deck a Kaiju, that's the only card in your hand, you're still going to get OTK. So Mermelds are just crazy, you guys. Very, very powerful strategy. Definitely not to be slept on. And this is a deck you're going to hate getting paired up against if you don't open the correct hand, because you have to have like 3 hand traps. If you have 2, one's going to get taken away by a deep sea card and the other one's going to be played around. You need like 3 hand traps. So this is a combo deck that's like super duper top tier. And it waxes a lot of the other combo decks. Even decks in today's age like Eldritch Adamantipator. Eldritch might be able to play getting hand loop, but once you see their hand with the deep sea, then you're just going to go a different route. So this deck's also versatile in the board making. Board breaking is pretty solid. Very, very kind of like jack of all trades in the sense that it can go first or second if you play it and build it correctly. Next, we're going to talk about Pendulums, Galaxy Eyes, and Danger Dark Worlds. So, first of all, Pendulums and Galaxy Eyes are arguably the strongest, for me personally. Okay, this is biased because these are arguably the strongest combo decks on this list, not only because they can play through multiple interruptions, but also because they have main deck outs to cards that normally destroy other combo decks. You can play these cards. It's the Buster Lock, you know, you can assemble multiple negates, you can play around hand traps, and also these decks are very aggressive going second, like Heroes and Mermelds. They can play like you don't have to go first with these decks, but also at the same time, they plus very, very hard. Their boards are hard to crack because they don't just put up negations. Like Heroes and Mermelds will put up negations, but they won't really have protection. Does it make sense? Dark Law and Plasma, okay, you have Honest Neos. Okay, that's cool. With Mermelds, their boards don't really have protection. Sometimes they don't need it, but the point is Pendulums and Musketeers, Pendulums and Galaxy Eyes can put up multiple negates that also sometimes can't be destroyed or targeted by card effects. That is crazy. Because now there's certain cards that you can't even use to break that board that you don't have to negate. And also keep in mind the ceiling of these decks is crazy. So Pendulums, Galaxy Eyes, Mermelds, and Heroes are like the top tier, top notch of the other. Like there's a bottom 4 and there's a top 4. These are the stronger combo decks on this list. I would say Mermelds going first is probably going to clap almost everything, but then there's some decks that just use their graveyard like a resource where you might not be able to hand loop and then you don't put up enough negates. So it depends on the matchup sometimes, but with Pendulums and Galaxy Eyes, because even Heroes, their board is very like specific to monster combo heavy decks. You know, you might get lucky and you're like, oh, Orcus, they need the Grave, Dark Law, yes. You know, but with Pendulums and Galaxy Eyes, you can assemble multiple Omni negates. You have critical mass for going second. You can OTK with cards like Afterglow, the Galaxy Eyes package, Cyber Dragon Infinities at your access. You have cards like Starly's Photon Blast to protect your entire board. Orbital's a card. You have powerful spells and traps at your access. You have one of the strongest counter traps in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! You can lock your opponent out of their extra deck with Pendulums. It's Pendulums, you guys. Like, this deck had to get... I don't even have to explain how good this deck is. I'm just going to say this. This deck had to get hit Lord knows how many times on the ban list. Still wasn't enough. Got hit a couple more times on the ban list. Still wasn't enough. Electromite to 1. Okay, Servant came out. Put it to 1. Banned Electromite. You know what else? We went into Link format because Pendulum mechanic existed. Let that set it in. Let that speak for itself. Pendulum as a mechanic was so powerful, Konami said, we're about to change the entire way that Yu-Gi-Oh's played just because of Pendulums. You guys need to pay attention to how they did the Link format. That was to nerf Pendulums. Pay attention to that. This deck speaks for itself, okay? This is a sleeper deck because it's just not represented like that. But let me tell you, if played right and built correctly, this deck is really insane. But I will say, unlike some decks like Mermails, it might not be able to play through 3 hand traps all the time. But if you draw insane, this deck's insane hands body like everything. You can play around Dark Roller, Spear Mode, Nibiru, Super Poly, and Evenly Matched. You can play around every side deck card, opening the nuts with Pendulum. You could have an extra deck lock, multiple negates, so many negates Spear Mode won't cover it, a counter trap for Dark Roller no more, a floodgate up, you can put out Zombie World off of shooting Rizar Dragon, you can play Orcus cards. Pendulums are just ridiculously insane. Galaxy Eyes are insane too, and they also can play mid-range and control, and they have recursion that's stronger than Heroes, stronger than Mermail, and stronger than Pendulums. So out of all the 4 top tier combo decks, Galaxy Eyes has the strongest recursion, which gives them an element like Sound Migrates for the long run, and they have arguably the most consistent are going to be Heroes and Galaxy Eyes. Pendulums and Mermails can still brick at times, but Galaxy Eyes and Heroes are very unlikely to brick. These have like the highest level of consistency, and they have their own forms of recursions, and they have follow-ups. If their boards get broken, they can make them again. With Mermails and Pendulums, that's not always the case, but most of the time, you don't even have to worry about that because it's just so hard to break the board. So the strongest combo deck on this list is Danger Dark World. Danger Dark World is cut from a completely different fabric. You know, I said Heroes is cut from a different fabric. Danger Dark World is insane, you guys. You guys just don't know. I played this deck in real life. I couldn't even believe what I was doing with it. I was extra linking just because I could. I was literally hand looping people without putting their cards in the graveyard. I was putting them back into their deck. I was putting out Omni Negate boards. You could put out Appaloosa, Trigate, and Titanic Galaxy boards after you rip 4 cards out their hand. Now they're top decking. Like, they're going to play with 2 cards. Oh, I have Dark Ruler. Okay, what are you going to do? Activate Evenly Matched next? Now you have no cards in your hand and I still keep a card. I win every time. This deck can play through so many negates. It can break 6 negate boards. Danger cards are disgusting, you guys. Danger Dark World is just crazy. You guys have to see it to believe it. You have to play the deck. Because if you guys think that I'm tripping or overhyping this deck for putting it over every other deck, no. I feel like the only weakness this deck could have where it just wouldn't be able to play its effective is if you lock it out from graveyard. Basically, like if you have an Abyss Dweller that doesn't get answered. That's where the deck can really struggle. Now, you can still assemble crazy boards because you might not trigger Dark World effects in Graves, but you're still summoning dangers no matter what, which means you're still spamming the board. So that's one of the weaknesses that the deck has, very similar to like Shaddolls, Mermails, Heroes might be hurt by Dweller. You know, there's certain combo decks that get hurt by Dweller, and there's certain combo decks that don't. So every deck has its weakness. Every deck does. But the thing with Danger Dark World is, unlike these combo decks, is it doesn't have to play around hand traps. It plays through them. Like, it will get Nibiru'd, Ash, Imperm, beginning of the end, draw 3, summon Coach King, Giant Trainer, draw 3. Do you have 7 cards in your hand? Yeah, and you only have 2 because you used 3 hand traps on me. What the heck? When do decks do that? This deck's crazy. You guys just have to play it. Danger Dark World is absolutely a monstrosity. It is the strongest sleeper combo deck on this list. So going into mid-range / controls. Oh yeah, and the final thing I need to mention for the combo decks, but they also fall in the category of mid-range and control, is machines. I put down Cyber Dragons, Orcus, Trains, Machines, and Infinitrack. These can all be aggressive OTK decks, they can be combo decks, they can be mid-range, they can be play control. So out of all of these decks, these effectively can be piloted in almost every single play style. And they're interchangeable amongst each other. You can actually throw together a deck with almost all of these machine archetypes in one deck. When you have a monstrosity like that, that's impressive. They have their own unique win conditions. They can summon generic cards like True King of All Calamities. They can lock you out the game. They can put up multiple negates. And because they're machine decks, they're naturally, Konami makes machine decks very aggressive. And these decks can utilize cards like Needle Fiber, like most decks on this list. I'm not going to mention Needle Fiber because he's just, nope. But I feel like Cyber Dragons and Orcus are the strongest. But these decks can combo off, right? But the way they combo off is not like these other combo decks. The way Infinitracks and Machinas, and Trains combo off, is like, okay, to an extent, it starts to look like a combo deck, but these decks can also do very little and accomplish a lot. You guys have to catch that. They can do very little and accomplish a lot. They have their own cheesy kind of Utopia, the double OTK with Gustav, Max, and Lee. Cyber Dragons and Orcus, they combo off, but they don't play as a, like, they don't spam that much like Pendulums and like Heroes. They're not swarming all the time. But the monsters they summon are crazy. They're self-sustaining sometimes, they have follow-ups, and they're really good at breaking boards. Machine decks in general, all these sleeper machine decks, are really good at breaking boards. That's one thing I have to give to like I tip my hat to like almost every machine strategy, even ABCs. Machine decks, you guys that's why I just put machines. They're really good at breaking boards, like all of them. And limit removal is still at 3. Even though people might not think that card's good or it's not popular, let somebody catch you off guard with a limit removal and you tell me if the card's good or not. So machine decks definitely go in there too. For control decks, we have Phantom Knights, we have Generators, we have Tinnies, we have Megaliths, which are kind of like a mid-range control. Can be played combo deck, but they're a different breed too. Megaliths. Ancient Warriors go in the same category as machines. They're more like an aggressive going second deck. They don't have a lot of combos. They can't make boards, but they can break boards better. Ancient Warriors is just a really good sleeper deck. It can actually prevent you from stopping it with certain cards where you just can't respond. It's crazy, and it's getting better. It's going to get better. I'm probably going to retouch upon that when it gets its new support. But Ancient Warriors are definitely slept on. We have Dark Magician. We have Magical Musketeers. And then we have Shaddolls and Plunder Patrol. So we're going to talk about the weakest ones. The weakest ones for me, Phantom Knights without their new support is one of the weakest. With their new support, they might be stronger, but Phantom Knights is a really, really grindy control deck. They can go second. Fog Blade's crazy. Like, Break Sword's insane, you guys. It's really, really strong cards, self-replacing, very similar to Eldritch. You use your cards to make stuff. They replace themselves by banishing for more cards. Tinyi just has crazy good 2-card combos. It's one of those decks very similar to Dark Warrior because its engine only requires 1 or 2 cards. You can play a multitude of hand traps. And this deck can draw the hand traps too. It can summon Vanity's Fiend and Majesty's Fiend. You could play like 15 to 20 hand traps and get away with it with Tinnies. Tinnies can also be played as a combo deck. There's so many different varieties of how you can play this deck. It's what is your flavor? Tinnies is like that. What's your flavor deck? It's a very unique deck in its own. The same with Phantom Knights. Phantom Knights are very straightforward, very kind of borderline simplistic the way you play the deck. It's not like the playstyle itself, it's how you can manipulate your resources the most effective to stretch the game as far as you can get it. And if not, you have cheesy win conditions like Access Coke Talker and Borosword. Touching on generators, generators are crazy. Multi-negates, hand loops, calamities. This deck is kind of like a different breed too. This deck is like a multitude of combo, control, aggressive, OTK. This deck just comes out of nowhere with it. So I feel like Generators, Plunder Patrols, and Shaddolls are the strongest. I'm going to touch up on Dark Magician, very iconic deck. Very, very strong with Magician's combination and Dragoon of the Red Eyes. If you get the right setup, you have Dragoon of the Red Eyes, Magician of Navigation, Eternal Soul. You just get once you get your engine set up, this deck plays really good once it gets its board established. But its recovery is not that strong. It's not that good going second. But going first with the right cards, you can blow people out with viruses. Eternal Soul is pretty strong for what it's worth. Dragoon of the Red Eyes is a crazy strong card. That's going to make this deck even more powerful. Its new fusion's incredible. Magician Soul is good. It has good cards. It's just it doesn't always get to make good cards with the resources it has, if that makes sense. It's probably going to need Dragoon of the Red Eyes, like I said, probably that good extra deck boss monster. Magical Musketeers are also a unique deck that can go first or second. Max is what makes the deck able to go second so effectively. Very straightforward deck, not difficult to pilot. One of the most popular of all the sleeper decks. It's a sleeper deck due to its representation. I don't have to brush up on it too much. The deck, like I said, very straightforward. Probably everybody watching this video knows how the deck functions. I don't have to talk too much about that. So touching into, I touched Tinnies. We got into PKs. Generators, we went over generators, are super crazy too. That deck is just gonna it gets going places. Megalith are like a resource game deck, like Salman Greats. They're gonna get to a point where it's just almost impossible to kill them. Like Ultra Guys, it just snowballs out of control. You can play generic cards, you can play Block Dragon, you can search Barrier Statues, Fossil Dyna, you can Link spam, you can Synchro spam, using Needle Fiber combos. You can play Diviner of the Heralds when the card comes out. You can summon rituals on your opponent's turn, nuking their field, playing Necros cards. It can actually Floodgate lock you out of monster effects with that new Chaos Ritual monster, summoning it on your turn. It has a really, really strong mechanic. It's not that strong going second, but it's in the long run, the deck is just built to last. That's what I can say about it. Very strong deck, very slept on. Musketeers we touched upon. Shaddolls, now we come down to Shaddolls. and Plunder Patrols. And yeah, Shaddolls and Plunder Patrols. These are two of my favorites on this list because these are decks where I look at them like, it doesn't even make sense why these are sleeper, especially Shaddolls how they fell from grace. These decks snowball out of control. They can turn one card into many. They can go first or second. They can destroy boards going second. They absolutely... Watch me break 6 negate. Look on my channel. Look up Can Shaddolls break a 6 negate board. You will see me wreck Endymion, Jackal King, Vortex, Opelucid for 3 playing Shaddolls with no side deck cards. Just fusion spells and Shaddoll monsters. This deck is so effective with chain blocking, recursion, aggressive OTKs, board making, play making, strategic advancements. Like, dude, this deck is like jack of all trades, like legit. It's a toolbox. It has an out to almost anything you could think of, and it has floodgates for specific matchups. Shikinaga, Winda, Grista, Construct's amazing. Opcolone can just clap, permanent negate, floats. Like, this deck is really, really powerful. With the Invoked engine, you've got a whole nother beast at like summoning out Winda, Kaliga, Mechaba, Appaloosa, Dweller. It can lock you out the game. And its recursion is very unique. It's so loopy. It's so hard to kill. Shaddolls are not weak by any means, shape, or form. Do not sleep on this deck. Do not ever talk bad about Shaddolls because that deck can destroy you. If I can break a 6 negate board with no hand traps, that means that Shaddolls are crazy. And I wasn't even playing Invoked. It was pure. Plunder Patrols are very unique. The deck can turn one card to mini. The deck can grind. It's able to use hand traps. It's able to play different variants. I've been having a lot of success personally just testing with pure Plunder Patrol. The deck actually can play through multiple interruptions. You guys should see a video that I made playing through 3 Omni Negates and still breaking that whole board. This deck OTKs out of nowhere. It floats. It's very grindy. It's very recursive. Its engine just starts to play itself after you get it set up correctly. It's very unorthodox, very hard to counter. People don't understand how to side against this deck. It's a very, very unique strategy. Plunder Patrols are definitely slept on. You have interruptions for almost every matchup. For back rows, you've got Brawn. For combo, you've got Mork and Lice. You've got Blackbeard. You've got access to generic cards like Drag-Eye, totally awesome, Dweller, Synchro Spams, White Aura Well for breaking boards, and it's getting more support. Everything floats. It's crazy. Now, the best sleeper deck on this list, Herald of Perfection. Unlike every other deck on this list, this deck is going to consistently tell you these two things. You can't activate card effects, and you can't special summon. If you do not have Dark Ruler no more, you absolutely cannot play. You cannot play the game. You cannot Nibiru me. You can't Ash Blossom me because you can Ash one of my 5 starters. I can still go off. I could play Called by the Grave if I want to. Your only way you're stopping me is if you have Droll and Lockbird. That's like the only way you're going to stop me. If you think your Valor, Ash, Imperm, Nibiru is going to do something, you got a whole nother thing coming. This deck's vastly consistent. You can play even more engines in it, like incantations. There's so much support for rituals that's generic that you can throw into this deck. Herald of Perfection plus Chrissy is insane. This deck's a lot stronger going first than it is going second. Where it shines going second is with the Star Seraph cards, being able to break boards with the Star Seraph, summoning cards like the Map Mechs to sin, pop, draw. It's crazy. You can link climb in a Borlo, Boar Sword. You can summon insane boards. But the best board of the format, I feel, is a Herald of Perfection backed up with 5 negates and Christia. And if you think this deck is not consistent, you have neither played against it, nor built it, nor played it in real life. This is my favorite deck for a reason. Yes, I know it's not as aggressive going second as other decks. You can side deck effectively or build. Don't forget Benton's generic, she searches any light fairy. You can play the Elemental Lord that's a Raigeki. You can put in more critical mass cards. There's a Chaos card that's a fairy that's searchable. You just banish something to summon it. That puts out bodies. Diviner of the Herald still ain't out yet. The deck's only going to get better. This deck is absolutely insane. It's a powerhouse. You guys, I'm a believer for a reason. I've even topped with this deck. This is a sleeper deck, but I have topped multiple regionals with it. I've got more, honestly, a top for me is a top, and an invite is a different story. So there have been times where I have done better with Zephyros, where I'm like, okay, I got top 8. And there have been times with Heralds where I'm like, dang, top 32 still counts because you get an invite. So for me, like, an invite's an invite. It still counts as a top because top 32 gets their invites. But when you really, really top is when you get like top 8. That's like topping. But besides the point, I've done really good with Heralds, ultimately, to say. And I played multiple variants of it. There's so many ways. I have over 100 different ways to build this deck on this channel. This is the best rogue strategy for me because it is the most degenerate playstyle of all of these decks. It can go combo, it can go control, mid-range. It has one of the strongest boss monsters that ever existed. This is the only deck, I would say, where you have to draw Dark Ruler no more or you lose. And it can play Forbidden Chalice and Condemn Witch to stop the Dark Ruler no more. I'm just saying. So even though you can say, oh, it's not that strong, oh, it's not that good, let you get paired up against Archlord, Christie, and Herald. You can drop a Dark Ruler comment all you want. I got 6 ways to out it. I can throw in 3 more of Solemn Judgments and call it 9. Stop playing with me. The only way to break that board is with Dark Ruler no more. Because if you can't special summon and you can't activate spells, traps, or monster effects, you can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! All you're doing is normal summoning, setting, and passing. So the deck does have its weaknesses, and I feel like it's Dark Ruler no more, honestly. That's why you side deck for that. And the deck actually is really, really strong playing through hand traps. Going second, you just gotta activate Dawn. That's where you're gonna like really, really dominate. Once you get Herald on field, it's very hard to negate anything after that because anything they negate, you can negate with it. So these are the 20 high tier sleeper decks for me that I feel are very, very powerful and deserve recognition. That's gonna wrap up this video. I'm gonna say a quick prayer and then I'm gonna be out. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, Jesus. Thy kingdom come and thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you, Father. And please give us this day our daily bread, Lord. And please forgive us of our debts as we forgive our debtors, Lord Jesus. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the glory, and the power forever. In the mighty name of Jesus I pray. Thank you, Father. Amen. Deuces is wild, yo.